Dr. Neal Barnard is a leader in nutrition and research. As an adjunct associate professor of medicine at George Washington University and a researcher funded by the National Institutes of Health, he has led key research studies to improve the health of people with diabetes, obesity, lipid disorders, and other serious health problems. His research has been cited by the American Diabetes Association and the American Dietetic Association in official policy statements on healthful diets. Dr. Barnard completed medical school and residency at the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C., and in 1985 founded the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, a nationwide group of physicians and lay supporters that promotes preventative medicine and addresses controversies in modern medicine. He's a New York Times best-selling author and the editor-in-chief of the Nutrition Guide for Clinicians, as well as over 20 books.
Broke another ankle.
This new book that just made it to the ship is Dr. Neal Barnard's cookbook for reversing diabetes, and you've got to see it. It has beautiful color pictures in it, and his wonderful book that you may already also have, the cheese track is in there, as well as Power Foods for the Brain and others. I highly recommend you go to the Silver Lounge to get those books, and I hear he has a book signing at 1:30 this afternoon. It's in your program. And now, as one of over 200 worldwide Food for Life instructors, it is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Neal Barnard.
Thank you very much. Did everybody get a good night's rest? Good. By the way, Sandy called me first thing this morning. He said, Neal, you're speaking at 9. Would you please make a special announcement? And the announcement, well, there's two announcements. The first is, we got a complaint from the cruise management. They said, you vegans are such nice people, but you don't drink anything, and you don't gamble in the casino. So they said, it's really up to you. If the cruise makes money, you've got to drink heavily and gamble all night long, okay? So I wanted to pass that along. And Sandy also wanted me to let you know that if you have any problem of any kind, please call his cabin directly, no matter what time of day. No, I'm serious. And if you need a bedtime story, or if you'd like to have your pillow fluffed a little bit, Sandy will be right over, okay? So just call him and he'd love to do that for you. All right, let's talk about nutrition, okay? For me, the modern era of nutrition started in 1990 with the work of Dr. Dean Ornish. Familiar name? What Dean Ornish did was to look not at can you prevent heart attacks, but can you make heart disease go backwards once a person already has it? And he did a really low-tech thing, I guess you would say. Vegetarian foods. Now, why would you use vegetarian foods for a heart patient as opposed to meat? Okay, you don't want cholesterol, you don't want the animal fat, and in fact, today we would really say vegan. There was virtually no dairy or eggs in either, practically. A half-hour walk every day. Manage stress, which is why he didn't do the study in Washington, D.C., where I live. And avoid tobacco, and that was the whole program. There was no use of surgical procedures, no medication. They didn't use Lipitor, just these simple lifestyle changes. And after a year's time, cholesterol dropped 24%. LDL cholesterol, is that a familiar term, LDL? It's bad cholesterol. It dropped 37%, which is huge. And your average person lost 22 pounds, which is great. Some of them were already skinny, and they didn't lose anything, but some were quite heavy and lost a lot, and so the average was 22. But what made medical history was after a year, everybody had an angiogram, which is a special x-ray of the heart that shows you this tiny trickle of blood that gets through. And the arteries were actually opening up enough that you could see a measurable difference in 82% of the patients in the first year. No surgery, no drugs, no nothing. Just this really simple set of lifestyle changes. And then after 5 years, the Journal of the American Medical Association publishes data looking at, okay, do you have a heart attack? Do you need angioplasty? Do you need bypass surgery? Do you die? And In a control group that didn't make these changes, they had a lot of these problems. But in the experimental group that was doing this plant-based intervention, it was amazing to see they became not quite bulletproof. So when you look around the world, this suddenly fits. Researchers have been looking at Seventh-day Adventists for a long time. And when I started my research career, I couldn't figure out why are people always putting Seventh-day Adventists under the microscope? What is that about? And well, I learned that the idea is that the Adventist church says you shouldn't smoke cigarettes, and you shouldn't drink alcohol and avoid caffeine, and you ought to not eat meat. And almost all Adventists do the first three. They're not smoking, they're not drinking, they're avoiding caffeine, but some of them go vegetarian and some don't. They vary in diet, and that gives you a really good natural experiment. Health-conscious people following different diets. So in 2009, the American Diabetes Association published these data. And what they were looking at was body mass index. Is that familiar to you, your BMI? BMI is your weight, but it's adjusted for how tall you are. And a healthy body mass index, or BMI, I'm going to say is below 25, okay? They took about 61,000 people and split them into 5 groups depending on the diets that they followed. And on the left here, you have this red line. These are non-vegetarian meat eaters, typical American meat eaters, and their BMI was not below 25, it was 28.8. And the next group they called semi-vegetarian, meaning they ate meat but less than once a week. The kind of person who would say all things in moderation, have some meat, just not too often. They're not a lot slimmer, but a little bit. And then pesco-vegetarian. Pesco is what? Okay, so no meat except for fish. All right, good. A little skinnier, but as you notice, the fish eaters aren't really that skinny either. Okay, file that away. We're going to come back to why fish eaters tend to be heavier than other people. Lacto-ovo-vegetarian. Lacto is what? Dairy products. Ovo is eggs. Okay, lacto-ovo-vegetarian. They don't eat meat, but they're having eggs, and they're having cheese, and they're having the cheese omelets, and having those what? And they're skinnier than the fish eaters, but who's this group? I have to tell my patients that a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. The vegan diet means no animal products at all. And they happen to be the only group that is predictably in the healthy weight range on average. But the reason that the American Diabetes Association published these data wasn't because of weight, it was because of this. This is diabetes risk. And the meat eaters have a lot of risk of diabetes, and the vegans dramatically lower. So that looks like the more you get the animal products off your plate, the better off you're going to be. So let's do it the other way. Let's say you're following a vegan diet, and somebody says to you, you know, every now and then you can have some cheese or a little ice cream or maybe some fish. If you're in that group and you suddenly decide to add some dairy, suddenly you're in that group. So your risk of diabetes is a little higher and your likelihood of weight problems is higher. And then if you say, well, shouldn't you have some salmon every now and then for omega-3, and suddenly, okay, you're now in that group. A lot higher risk of diabetes and a higher risk of weight problems. You get the idea? So the more the animal products come in, the unhealthier you are. The more you get the animal products out, the better off you're going to be. So you don't have to be Adventist. You can be European. And the same thing happens. This is men, this is women, and the meat eaters are the heaviest, and the vegans are the skinniest. Okay? Very simple. So, my research team said, let's try this. Let's try this for people who never thought about doing a vegan diet in their life. And let's see what happens. So we brought in 64 women. Everybody was moderately to severely overweight. They had all done the Atkins diet, South Beach, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, you name it, they had all lost weight and regained weight. And lost weight and regained weight and yo-yoed around, and they were all feeling stuck. And so what we asked them to do was something different. Vegan diet. Now, the reason I'm saying vegan diet is we want to be clear there were no animal products of any kind. The second thing is it was low in fat. So if you're used to taking that bottle of olive oil and going glug, 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 glug all over your pasta, we're not going to do that. We taught them some non-oil cooking techniques. Very simple. But those were the only rules. We did not use any portion sizes. There was no limit on calories or carbs. There was also no exercise, because we just want, now exercise is good, but we want to zero in on what will the diet do just by itself. Okay, so what we encourage them to eat from is the power plate: fruits, grains, vegetables. What are legumes? Legumes are my friend the bean. Let's say a word for our friend the bean. Beans are a humble food, neglected and not really thought well of. But beans have protein, they have calcium, they have iron, they have little traces of omega-3s, they got soluble fiber, they have insoluble fiber. Beans don't have a good PR firm working for them, but we're going to cheerlead for our friend the beans, right? Yes, the beans. Stand up for your neglected friend the bean. Okay, so that's the legume. Lentils and peas are also in that group. So, a typical day's meals in our research study could mean blueberry pancakes, and our patients were fearful. You're going to have me eat blueberry pancakes, like I must be gaining weight if I do this. And they could have syrup on it too. And if they had chili, fine, it would just not be a meat chili. It would be a vegetable chili or bean chili or whatever. When my linguine arrives, it would not be topped with the meat sauce, right? No Alfredo either. But artichoke hearts, seared oyster mushrooms, whatever. This does not seem like punishment. And I have to tell you that after 14 weeks, the average person had lost 13 pounds. And we tracked them for one more year, and they were skinnier at a year than at the beginning, and then we tracked them for a year after that, and they were skinnier at 2 years than they were at 1 year. So in other words, unlike every other diet that tries to starve the weight off you and say, it's just calories in, calories out, you just gotta eat less, and so you're cutting 500 calories a day off your diet, and the dietitian sits you down and says, just be a little hungry. By about Wednesday, you are ready to eat the sofa. And then when your natural homeostatic mechanisms say, listen, hunger is not us, we have to eat, then we start blaming ourselves for our physiological drive to eat normally. Anyway, that's not a good way to do it. These people, in our study, just ate normal amounts of healthy food. And they lost weight automatically. And we're going to come back as to why that was. But first, I'd like to talk to you about your car insurance. This is Geico. You know that little lizard, the little green guy? He's vegan, okay? So anyhow, their health director called me up in about 2006 and said, we have 2,500 people working at Geico's national headquarters, which is a few blocks from my office. And would we do a study at Geico? Helping people who have diabetes to get better, or people who have extra weight to lose weight. I said, let's do this. Here's what we'll do. We'll do two things. We'll put healthy food in the cafeteria. So you might have unhealthy stuff, but let's have an oatmeal bar for breakfast, and let's have the veggie burgers, and whatever's vegan, let's serve it. But let's also have once a week a group where people can get together and share their experiences, maybe do some cooking classes, say every Wednesday at lunchtime for your employees. Let's do that. That's pretty easy, right? Fine, let's do it. And it worked very well, except I have to say for the cafeteria manager, this was a kind of a learning experience, I have to say. Yes, you shouldn't put bacon and cheese on your vegan burger. You figure that out. $5.99 was a good price for it. Anyway, after 18 weeks, in a control site in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where they got no program, they didn't lose any weight, but in the Washington, D.C. program, they lost weight very, very nicely, which is what you'd expect. So their waist got slimmer. So then we worked with Geico and did this in 10 cities across the United States, because there would be people who could say, you could never do this in Macon, Georgia. Or we don't do this in San Diego, or in Buffalo, we eat wings, we're not going to do your program. Well, so we did Geico, we did this program at Geico in all these cities. And exactly what you think happened is people lost weight. And if they had diabetes, their hemoglobin A1C, which is an index of their blood sugar control, it got better. Okay? And we had a couple of participants in the first session who our instructors kept complaining about. They would come back to the office and they would say, it's so great teaching classes over at Geico. The employees are so enthusiastic. They're really into it. Except for two of them. There's Hillary and Bruce, and they're the youngest people in the class, and they come every time, but they sit in the back and they don't pay any attention. And all they do is pass notes back and forth and chatter and distract all the other participants. And I wish they wouldn't even come because they obviously don't care about it, and they're just distracting everybody. And every week I kept hearing about how bad Hillary and Bruce were. But you know what? You can misjudge people. They were talking a lot and they did distract people. But what they were talking about was what they were going to pick up at the store on the way home. They were making their shopping list because they wanted to do the diet 100%. And they were making plans for a completely vegan Thanksgiving for their whole family and figuring out how to make their parents go vegan with them. They were 100% into it. And after a year they sent me this picture. Hillary's lost 85 pounds. Bruce has lost 100 pounds. Yeah. But Bruce taught me something. He said to me, when Bruce sent me these pictures, he said, the people on the left, we never exercised. We just felt stupid. We didn't want people to see us jogging down the street. And one other thing, when you diet, if you've got some weight you're trying to lose, and you go on a diet and you suddenly discover the diet is not so easy, or maybe you're not following it very well, and other people seem to succeed, but you don't. And it starts to not just have a physical effect, it has an emotional effect. It makes you feel like, there's something wrong with me. I just don't have willpower. Maybe I'm just not as strong as other people. They should succeed, why can't I succeed? And then that just bleeds into other aspects of your life. Maybe I'm not so good at things. Maybe I'm not such a good worker. Maybe I'm not really a good father, or whatever. And this poisonous, completely inaccurate notion pervades your life, that there's something wrong with me. But then when you discover there is nothing whatsoever wrong with you, there is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with diets that say, starve it off, or don't eat any starches. Don't eat any potatoes or sweet potatoes, and don't eat any beans, and don't eat any, you know what I'm talking about. Those diets were not designed for you, and they're not going to work for you, and they're going to tell you a lot of lies. And once you set that aside and you put into your body the foods you were designed for, then success comes on its own. And when you discover that your metabolism can ramp up and the weight can start coming off, and then you start to succeed not just with physical things, but in other aspects of your life. And Hillary and Bruce never exercised. But once they realized that their bodies were better than they'd given themselves credit for, they started taking up exercise. And they sent me this picture the day they ran their first half marathon. All right, so how does this work? I just told you you could eat blueberry pancakes and spaghetti and you're going to lose weight. The first thing is a real no-brainer, fiber. Fiber means, don't go to sleep. I know this is like the most boring word, but fiber means plant roughage. It's in beans, it's in lots of vegetables, and when you're on a completely plant-based diet, a vegan diet, everything that goes in your mouth has fiber. And because fiber doesn't have calories, and because it fills you up, you tend to just naturally eat less than you would otherwise, okay? So, animal products, they don't have any fiber at all, and so you get all the calories in those foods. Okay, so high fiber foods are good, plant foods are always high in fiber, animal foods never. All right, now the next thing, and this is really important, this is going to be on the test. A gram of fat has 9 calories. You with me? Okay, a gram of carbohydrate, whether it's a potato or rice or bread or even pure sugar, has only 4 calories, okay? So, if I'm not eating any animal fat, if I don't eat beef, if I don't eat chicken, I'm not getting any animal fat, and that's good because animal fat has how many calories in a gram? 9, that's right. Now, if I'm keeping oils low, how many calories am I skipping for each gram of oil? 9, that's right. Now, a lot of people have trouble with this. All fats, even vegetable oils, they're healthier than beef fat, but they still have 9 calories in every gram. I want to make sure we got this. How many calories are there in a gram of beef fat? 9, right. Chicken fat? Okay, fish oil? That's right. Olive oil? Extra virgin olive oil? 1040 motor oil? Good. That's true. Let's try this. But if you cook with 1040 mortar, it actually does have 9 calories per gram. Okay. When you're on a vegan diet, you're avoiding all the animal fats, you're avoiding all that stuff, and you're suddenly eating rice, and that's only got 4 calories per gram. But keep the oils low, and that also applies to nuts and guacamole. I'm sorry to tell you, there are, yes, I'm breaking your heart, there are very few plant foods that have a lot of fat, but nuts and avocados are kind of the biggies. So if you're stuck on trying to lose weight and you're just having trouble, it's either added oils or it's the nuts and the avocados. That's really about it. Okay? All right. So, but this is not all there is to it. When you discover that with the passage of time, you might have started to gain a little bit of weight, people come into our center and they'll say, you know, when I was 16, I could eat anything, and I didn't gain any weight. But now I just look at food, and I gain weight. What's that about? My metabolism has got to be really slow. And it could be because we measure metabolism in our laboratory, and it does get slow. So here's what happens. You come into our laboratory in the morning, and I've got you lying on a table, and your metabolism, your calorie burning speed is very, very low. And I know that because I can measure it. And what we do is we put a canopy, a see-through plastic canopy, over your face and your shoulders. And as you're lying there breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide, I sample the air. And with some really easy arithmetic, I can tell you how fast your body is burning calories based on how much carbon dioxide you're putting out and how much oxygen you're taking in. And your metabolism really is slow. And then I give you a meal. And after your meal, your metabolism, because your body is absorbing calories, it's absorbing the foods, it's starting to burn them and just creating body heat. Your metabolism increases for 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours. And that's good. The more your metabolism rises, the more you're not putting food into body fat. You're just burning it up as heat. It goes away. So you go on a vegan diet, do it for about 3 months, come back, lie down on my table again. We'll measure your metabolism. I'll give you the exact same lunch or breakfast, and then your metabolism is about 16% higher. A vegan diet increases your metabolism in the after meal phase. What? Wait a minute. So the reason vegan diets cause weight loss isn't just because they're high in fiber that fills you up, and it's not just because we're avoiding all those fat grams, and a gram of fat has how many calories? Not exactly, not just because we're avoiding that, but it's doing something else in your body. It's ramping up your metabolism. And let's walk through what that is. This is a muscle cell. And the reason I'm showing you a muscle cell, I'm going to stick a needle in your arm, and I'm going to pull out one cell, and that's what it looks like. Have you heard people say, don't lose your muscle mass because your muscles are your calorie burners? Your muscles do burn a lot of calories. And inside the muscles are a couple of these. These are mitochondria. Remember that from high school biology? Your mitochondria are little burners inside your cells. And they are taking things you eat, and they burn them up for energy. And if they're active, if I got a lot of mitochondria, they're making a lot of energy. And they're not storing food as fat. They're burning it for energy, keeping you skinny. With me? Okay. But I've also got something else. I've got fat in the cell because I ate a chicken salad sandwich for lunch. And suddenly, oops, I got more fat inside my cell. Or I ate some Spam and I got even more. Now, doctors hate words like fat because it only has one syllable. So I'm going to call it intramyocellular lipid. But that's fat. That's fat inside a muscle cell. Here's what counts. When the fat arrives into the muscle cell, the cell says, yippee, this is great. It's so good to have this extra fat because what if we were to have a famine maybe in the next few months? I'm set. I've got all this food stored up. And so what your cell does is it turns down the mitochondria to try to keep the fat there. Your metabolism slows down. Let me be clear what I'm saying. You eat fatty foods. The fatty foods go into the cell. The cell tries to keep the fat there, and it can only do that if it stops making so many mitochondria. So fat in cells slows down your after-meal calorie burn. You with me? So, we're going to start a vegan diet. How much animal fat is in a vegan diet? None, right? I'm going to keep the oils really low. Do you think that fat stays there? No, it starts to dissipate. And when it dissipates, your metabolism comes back. And so I can measure it. Your after-meal metabolism is going to be about 16% higher on average. So why are vegans skinny? A, they're eating high-fiber foods that fill them up. B, they're avoiding all those fat grams, and a gram of fat has how many calories? 9. And their metabolism is better than everybody else on the block. Make sense? Very easy. So that's why you don't have to starve it off. It works whether you exercise or not. Exercise is good, but you don't have to. And you don't have to count calories or avoid carbs. So, getting the fat out of your cells boosts your after-meal calorie count. It increases your metabolism. So, this is a man named Jean Remy from Canada. He sent me these pictures because he was at 320 pounds. And his doctor said, well, you need to lose some weight. And you also have pre-diabetes now, and we know exactly where this is going. And so his wife gave him a book that I had written about reversing diabetes. And by the time he got to chapter 4, which said, no animal products, keep the oils really low, he had lost 160 pounds. And his pre-diabetes went away. And just like Hillary and Bruce, he said, you know what? I got energy. And he started to enjoy moving his body and became an instructor at the Y. So this is Jenna, similar story. She wanted to lose weight, but just did it with a simple vegan diet. And she got, not only did she get her waistline back, but she got her confidence back and got her health back. Very simple. Okay, so at this point, your skeptical friends, whom you say, I just went to this lecture that said you can be vegan and lose weight even if you don't count calories, they will tell you with great sincerity that humans are natural meat eaters. We're carnivores. And we know this is true because if you look at the cave paintings, there's like optimistic suggestions of what we might capture some afternoon if we go hunting. Okay, let's look back a little further in time. Do you know the dental test? This is science, people. The dental test. You look into a cat's mouth when your cat yawns, and have a look at your cat's teeth. And what you discover is the cat's teeth are like razor blades that they can use to capture and dismember their prey. And they can rip the fur off the muscle tissue, remove the muscle tissue from the bones, and they are set. Go into the bathroom and look up in the mirror at your own teeth. And you discover that your canines are no longer than your incisors, which is why if you one day decided you were going to try to eat roadkill, it's almost impossible. Make sense? Okay, so do you know the bunny test? This is the second scientific test. It's called the bunny test. Do you know this test? This is science, people. You take a bunny, and here's your bunny, and you put the bunny in front of your cat, and what you discover is that your cat has never seen a bunny. Your cat can be 6 months old, but your cat's brain is hardwired to devour that bunny. And your cat is going to capture and attack that bunny and swallow him, and it's the last thing he does. You can put the very same bunny in front of a baby or a toddler. And what you discover is that your toddler will say, bunny. And not in a million years would your child say, I shall eat him. That won't happen because his primate brain is not wired to think of an animal as food. Okay? All right. So, and by the way, this is true no matter what age you are. A cat who happens to see a bird with, say, an injured wing on the sidewalk flapping around, the cat will say, how propitious this is. I have lunch right in front of me. This is great. I'll take it from here. But a person, you could be the most hard-hearted, you could be a lobbyist. And if you saw an injured bird, you would not say, give me some mayo and some bread. You wouldn't do that, right? Because your brain is an herbivore's brain. Okay, so now we have one more test. Do you know the box test? No? Okay, this is science. Okay, you take a box, and the box had some electronics in it, like a camera or a laptop computer, and you look around in there, and you pull out silica gel. And there's a packet of silica gel. What's that for? It's to keep it dry, right? Okay, but the makers of silica gel are very wise. On every packet, they print 3 words very clearly. Do not eat. What does this tell us? Human beings are naturally herbivores, but we put any darn thing in our mouths, and we just can't resist eating all kinds of stuff. So people will say, why don't you have a hot dog? Why don't you eat this? Why don't you eat that? It has nothing to do with our biology, but we just eat it anyway, okay? So, this is a carnivore. Now, a carnivore has to be able to track prey, and it's better if the carnivore is faster than the prey, and they have to have ears to detect them, they have to have a nose to track them. So a dog's nose, as you know, is extremely sensitive. They can detect drugs and bombs, and they can detect prey at 100 yards. And their ears are very attuned. You know that dogs can hear frequencies you can't hear? Right? You know those whistles they sell? That's because they have to be able to hear prey at the distance. This is a human being. A human being has a cute little nose and nice little ears, but they don't have to have particularly acute senses because you don't have to sneak up on a strawberry. It's just very simple. Okay? You don't have to go tracking the strawberries. Where will the asparagus go? You know, that doesn't happen. Being an herbivore is like really easy. You plunk it in your mouth. Okay? All right. So I asked Richard Leakey, the famous paleoanthropologist Richard Leakey, I said, how did people become carnivores? He said, Neal, we are not carnivores. Human beings have never been carnivores. We have started to eat as if we are carnivores, starting with the Stone Age, because we don't have sharp teeth and we're not particularly fast like a carnivore, but you don't have to be fast. If the Stone Age gives you an arrowhead and you put it on an arrow and the arrow is fast and you can take your time catching up to the animal you've killed. And you don't have claws or fangs or whatever, but you don't need them if you've got stone tools to take their place. The problem is our coronary arteries are pre-Stone Age coronary arteries in our digestive tracts, and all the rest of us get sick if you start to eat the diet you're not really designed for, okay? So the diet we're designed for is the power plate: fruits, grains, vegetables, legumes. Legumes are? Beans. Yes, good. So we sent this to the USDA in 2009. We didn't hear from them. So in 2011, we sued the USDA, saying, come on, you've got to respond to us. And this is what the USDA instituted. This is actually now federal law. This is called My Plate. And it's not exactly what I sent them, but it's not bad. Fruits, grains, vegetables. Protein. The protein group could be meat, but it can also be beans. It can be tofu, it can be nuts. There's the dairy group, but it could be soy milk. They include that. That's federal policy. The U.S. federal policy now says you can be vegan and be totally healthy. It's included in here. And they dump the meat group. It's gone. All right, yes, that's true. Not perfect, but we're making progress. Okay, so now your friend says, okay, I get it, but where do you get your protein? You know, and if you're not consuming milk, where will you get calcium? Let's just walk through these issues real quick. Okay, first of all, protein. Protein is a very easy issue. Protein is made up of, if I took a protein molecule and I looked at it under a microscope, it's a string of beads, and each bead is an amino acid. And some of these amino acids are called essential because you have to eat them. The good news is they're in plants. You can get all the essential amino acids you need from plants. In fact, most plants have all the essential amino acids. And if you combine your beans with your rice or whatever, you get more than enough protein without any special combinations, without any special planning. Okay, protein is a complete non-issue. But I'll share with you just a quick number or two. The government would say a woman should have about 46 grams of protein in a day. A man, maybe 56. They probably don't need quite that much, but that's a little bit of a safety margin. Let's say you eat about 2,000 calories on a typical day. And tomorrow, if you were going to eat nothing but broccoli, 2,000 calories worth of broccoli and nothing else, don't do this, but if you did, you would have gotten 146 grams of protein. The next day, just lentils, 2,000 calories worth of only lentils, you would get 157 grams of pure protein. So what if the next day you ate lentils and broccoli and mixed? Or lentils, broccoli, and rice? Or plants have a huge amount of protein that they deliver to you in its complete form, which is why a rhinoceros is really big. or an elephant, or horses, or all vegan animals with their big rippling musculature, they're not asking themselves, where are you getting protein around here? There's plenty of protein, okay? Now calcium. A lot of people, particularly Americans and Europeans, think of calcium as coming from milk. Cows don't make calcium. Calcium is in the earth. And there's calcium in the ground, and the roots of grass pull the calcium into the grass. And the cow eats the grass, and some of that calcium gets into the cow's body and into the milk. And if you drink milk, about 70% of that calcium is never absorbed, it just goes out through the waste. But the other 30% you will absorb. If instead of doing that, you eat green vegetables directly, they got their calcium from the earth and it got into, hopefully not grass, but broccoli or Brussels sprouts or kale or collards or whatever, and then the absorption is usually 50% or higher from the green vegetables. So cows don't make calcium at all, they're just a middleman. You don't need dairy at all. It's just a distraction. Make sense? Now, vitamin B12 is something you do need for healthy nerves and healthy blood. And vitamin B12 is funny. It's not made by animals and it's not made by plants. Bacteria make vitamin B12. And you do need it. You need it for healthy brain function, healthy nerve function, and healthy blood cells. And some people will say, okay, before the advent of modern hygiene, there were bacteria in the soil, on plants, on our fingers, in our mouths, and that might give us the little trace that we need. An adult needs 2.4 micrograms of B12. It's very small. Whether that was ever true.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? Mrs. Flora Mason Van Orden. I repeat, Mrs. Flora Mason Van Orden is kindly requested to contact the guest service desk on deck 5 or to call 99. Thank you.
Okay, so you do need vitamin B12, and bacteria make it, but with the advent of modern hygiene, you can't assume that you're getting it from soil, from vegetables, from anything. And so don't plan on that. A supplement is always the best thing. And every drugstore and every health food store sells vitamin B12 supplements, and you ought to pick them up. It's also in every multiple vitamin you ever took. And it's fortified in a number of products. You'll see it in soy milk and in nutritional yeast and some things. But I encourage people to not fool around with it because you don't want to get B12 deficient. All right? By the way, meat eaters can often get deficient too. In theory, the cow's gut has bacteria that make B12. And the B12 will get into the meat, and so in theory, a carnivore will get B12. Except that you have to have pretty good stomach acid to pull the B12 off the protein. And if you're a little bit older, that may not work for you. And if you take metformin or acid-blocking drugs, then that interferes with B12 absorption too. And when you look at B12 deficient people, in any hematology clinic, most of them are not vegans. These are meat-eating people who just are not able to absorb B12. So the US government has recommended for years that everybody over the age of 50 should be taking B12. But I recommend that everybody at every age really should be doing it, particularly with a vegan diet. So make sense? So protein is a complete non-issue. Calcium is an issue, but an easy one. It's in green leafy vegetables. B12, you got to supplement. Okay? So what about soy? Do you hear people asking about soy? What do they say? Okay, is it risky or is it healthy? Here's what they're talking about. Back in 1931, researchers discovered in soy products there's something called isoflavones. And genistein is the most common one. And they noticed that the chemical structure of soy, or of the isoflavones, is a little bit like sex hormones. It's a little bit like a female sex hormone. It's also a little bit like testosterone too. But they started to worry because their fear was, if I eat tofu, will a male researcher become effeminate? This was their fear. Or could it affect fertility? Or let's say a woman consumes soy, will she get too much of an estrogen effect and have breast cancer? Or if she has breast cancer, would it progress? Anyway, these were the fears. So it turned out to be just the opposite. Researchers have studied this, and in 2004, a meta-analysis was published of 8 prior studies. And they looked at Asians and Asian Americans, and they picked them because they ranged from really low to really, really high soy intake. And what they found was that those who had the highest intake of soy milk, tofu, other soy products, had about a 29% reduced risk of getting breast cancer. So it was the opposite. Soy didn't cause cancer, it reduced the likelihood of getting cancer. So in 2014, there was a whole new analysis. Now there were 35 studies, and those who had the highest soy intake now had about a 40% reduced risk of getting cancer. And then a new study came out looking at 5 prior studies of women who had had cancer already. And they then looked at those who avoided soy and those who ate more soy. And it turned out that those who avoided the soy products did the worst. Those who ate abundant soy milk or tofu or whatever had the best survival. They had the least likelihood of dying. You understand what I'm saying? So, in other words, soy products don't increase the cancer risk, they actually reduce it. And a lot of mistaken doctors have said, you've been diagnosed with breast cancer, I would avoid soy if I were you. And the patient says, why do you say that? And the doctor says, I read it in a magazine somewhere. And no, I'm sorry. The scientific studies have shown very clearly that soy reduces cancer recurrence. Now, having said that, soy products are totally optional. A plant-based diet is not the soybean cheerleading club. You don't have to have soy. It's handy. It's always better than what it replaces. So soy milk is always better than cow's milk, and soy bacon is always better than pig bacon. You know, it's very versatile. One day they'll make snow tires out of it. It's amazing, all kinds of different kinds of soy. But you don't have to have it. But if you do, it's not harmful. With me? Okay, all right. All right, let me transition a little bit. Some people will say, well, I went vegan, but I think I'm a sugar addict. Or I can't say no to chocolate, or cheese is just calling my name all night long. So my question is, can foods be addicting? Can they? Do you think they can? Yes. Well, let's address this issue scientifically. Starting with a question that's on everybody's lips. How to magnetize a baby. We're going to start with the baby. And the baby should be 9 to 12 weeks of age. And you put the baby right in front of you, and you look at the baby, face to face, 15 inches apart. And you take a teaspoon of sugar and mix it into a cup of water, and take the baby's pacifier and stick it in the sugar water. Then plunk it in the baby's mouth and set a timer. For the next 3.5 minutes, keep the sugary pacifier in the baby's mouth and maintain eye contact. When the timer goes off, stop. The baby is now magnetized, and you may leave the room. And go out, come back in 10 or 15 minutes later with a dozen other people. And what you discover is that the baby doesn't look at anybody except you. The baby looks at you and coos and gurgles and throws you a seductive shoulder, and the baby really loves you. By the way, this does not have to be your baby. This could be like anybody's baby. You know, grandparents have been doing this for like a really long time. They magnetize, the neighbor kids come over, they magnetize them all. Okay, so what is going on here? Sugar on the tongue goes to the brain and triggers the release of opiates in the brain, which in turn trigger the release of dopamine, the pleasure chemical, in the baby's brain, and the dopamine then feeds back and says, what were we doing just now? What did that? Oh, it was you. Yes, it was you. And they will remember this forever. And this starts on day 1 of life. The baby's brain is ready for that. You can have a baby who is just born and they're crying. If you give them sugar water, you load up a little syringe and just put some sugar water in their mouth, they stop crying. If you have a kid who's going to be circumcised, which I'm not necessarily recommending, but when they do this, sugar water makes them quiet. Except if mom was a heroin addict. A newborn born to an addicted mother has a very, very blunted response to sugar. Any idea why that would be? Because that baby has been bathing in heroin for 9 months, and the opiate circuitry is now looking for something stronger. That baby's in withdrawal at birth. Okay. So sugar's a drug. Now, we are not babies and we don't have sugar water. We have our own grown-up versions of this. And we also have our own grown-up reactions to it, like this. Yay, sugar, hooray. So the question is, does this hurt me? Does it matter? And I'm going to argue that sugar doesn't matter. If it's a teaspoon here or there, who cares? Sugar has how many calories in a gram? 15 calories in a teaspoon, but a gram of sugar has how many calories? 4. A gram of sugar has 4 calories, a gram of fat has 9. So the person who's having a buttery croissant but is avoiding the sugar, the person who's having the cheeseburger but having the Diet Coke, they're missing the point. Now, I'm not saying sugar is health food, but it doesn't have that many calories. The problem is, however, sugar dissolves. And you can put a teaspoon of sugar into a soda, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. It's all just dissolving, so it ends up having a lot of calories eventually. So a typical 20-ounce soda has a lot of calories that you do not need. So I'm not promoting it. Soda, I'm going to say that soda is not the reason for weight gain for most people, but it's not health food. Even if it's called Dr. Pepper, okay? Great. All right, so, and the other problem, when I was a kid growing up in Fargo, North Dakota, we had sodas. They were 6-ounce bottles. They're in museums today. It's amazing. That was what we had. And then when cans came in, they were 12 ounces, and my mother would say, "Oh, I can't drink that whole thing. I wish they'd give us a stopper so I could save it for later." Well, then 16-ounce bottles came in, and now at the 7-Eleven, there aren't any bottles that are smaller than 20 ounces, and the kids are not saving that to have throughout the week. You know, that's your dose. So you are getting calories that nature didn't have in mind for you, okay? Plus, let's make sure Johnny stays really addicted. We're not just going to give him sugar, which triggers opiates in the brain. We're going to give him caffeine, and caffeine is a stimulant. And you can have a 12-year-old child having a couple of these a day who is addicted to caffeine at that age, okay? Getting 250 calories each time that they don't eat. All right, so it's not just sugar. Are there other things that are addicting? What? What would you say is addicting here? Green beans? No, that's edamame, cauliflower, bananas. What's the addicting one? Oh, that one, that one, that one. This is Narcan. Narcan is an opiate blocker. A guy gets a new shipment of heroin, and he shoots up, and did not realize that the new shipment is twice as strong as the shipment he got last week. And he starts getting wobbly, and he ends up face down in the gutter. And his friends know exactly what is going to happen, which is he is going to die. So they pick up his limp body and they drag him to the emergency room where we happen to have Narcan in the drawer. And we break the top off of that bottle and we suck it up into a syringe and we jam it into his arm. And the Narcan goes to the brain and it goes to the opiate receptors of the brain and it knocks the heroin off. And he wakes right up, just like that. And you've saved his life. I can give that very same drug not to a heroin addict, but to a chocolate addict. And it's the most amazing thing. You give them a little Narcan, and then you give them a tray of chocolate. You say, have some. And they'll say, okay, in a little while. Say, no, you love chocolate. Go ahead and have some. I'm not talking about a person who appreciates chocolate. Give this to a chocolate addict, a person who shovels it in. And it's really amazing. They'll say, I'll have some later. Go ahead. Oh, all right, I'll have a bite. And they just set it down. You say, no, keep going. You can have, no, for some reason, I'm just not in the mood for it right now. But by the way, this is not a treatment. This is a research tool. This is a research tool that we use to identify which foods work on the brain receptors rather than being all just taste and mouthfeel. I'd have to go with you to the 7-Eleven and we have to administer it intravenously on the way in the door. But the point that I'm making is we think we love chocolate because it has an aroma or a nice mouthfeel. It has nothing to do with it. It is a brain chemical. And in fact, it's got a little bit of caffeine. It has a little theobromine in it, which is... Anybody have a dog? Did your veterinarian ever say, don't let your dog have chocolate? This is what your vet's thinking of. Theobromine for humans is a stimulant, but for dogs it is a potentially fatal stimulant. And then there are other drugs also all in chocolate. So it's not just an opiate-acting drug. It's sort of the whole drugstore in one food, which is why chocolate addicts aren't satisfied with just sugar. It's got to be chocolate, okay? All right, anybody ever been a cheese addict in their life? Anybody have an issue with cheese? Okay, I got a whole other lecture that's coming up all about cheese, which I hope you'll come to, because we're going to touch on some really quirky parts of this wildly revered and problematic food. But I just want to give you a couple of points. Casomorphins are casein-derived morphine-like compounds. Casein is dairy protein. There is casein in milk, but when I turn milk into cheese, I concentrate the casein, and when it digests, these opiate chemicals are released from the cheese, and they go to the brain, and they attach to the very same receptor that heroin would attach to. Okay? So, does that matter? Well, are there calories in cheese? Yes, a lot. Is there fat in cheese? Yes. And every fat gram has how many calories? Exactly. And cheese is about 70% fat. So, yeah, 70. And it's as high or higher than steak in cholesterol. So if there was ever a food that was designed to just be poisonous to the human body, but looking appealing and innocent at the same time, that's cheese. All right. And dairy products contribute to a wide range of really peculiar issues like arthritis or migraines or digestive problems or asthma. And I'll talk about these in my next lecture. But it is amazing to see a person with chronic asthma or a person with rheumatoid arthritis get over these problems completely and never have them come back. Because the antigen, the protein that was triggering it, was in the dairy. And once they recognize it and got it away from them, they're going to get better. Not everybody gets better, but many, many people do. We'll come back to that, okay? But before leaving this, I do want to talk a little bit about prostate cancer, because most common cancer in men. In the dairy-consuming countries like USA and Canada and Iceland and Sweden, there's a lot of prostate cancer. But you could look at Thailand or Hong Kong or Japan, very little prostate cancer. The big milk-consuming countries have the most prostate cancer. And so, I'm going to talk more about that later, but just really quickly, at Harvard University, researchers looked in detail at this, not between countries, but within the United States, and they found that within the United States, milk drink...
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please. Mrs. Flora Mason Van Orden, I repeat, Mrs. Flora Mason Van Orden, is kindly requested to contact the guest service desk on deck 5 or to call 99. Thank you.
The dairy industry knows when I'm getting to a zinger. At Harvard University, they did 2 very large studies, and they found that milk-drinking men have between 30 and 60% higher risk of prostate cancer compared to men who don't drink milk. Now, there are other contributors and other ways to improve your odds, but just avoiding milk alone reduces the risk of prostate cancer in men. And the reason is that milk has growth factors in it that stimulate growth in the calf. And it causes, within the calf's body, the production of more growth factors that cause the calf to grow rapidly. Those very same growth factors, if they find a prostate cancer cell, they make it grow. Okay? So men have cancer cells arising, and your immune system will get rid of them, hopefully. And the same is true for women, that they'll have cancer cells arising and their immune system gets rid of them. But if you're consuming a food that causes growth factors to arise in your body, it stimulates the growth of cancer cells and makes them spread. You don't want that to happen. Make sense? Okay. So, let's talk about meat. We talked about sugar and chocolate and cheese, and let's talk about meat. There was a study a number of years ago, a survey, asking a group of men, could you give up meat for a week? Could you give up meat for a week if we pay you $1,000? And you would say, well, sure. Well, a surprisingly large number of white Americans and black Americans said, no. A week without meat? Keep your $1,000, I want my Spam. But, however, among Asian Americans, everybody said easily. Why? Because Asian Americans know about tofu, and they know how to make foods without meat. Hispanic Americans, same story. I can make a beef burrito, I can make a bean burrito, easy. I can go for 7 days without meat, no problem, give me the $1,000, okay? But to me, this is starting to sound like addiction. And you know, there are guys who will say, I'd rather die than give up my grill. Eating is just not eating if I can't have a steak. Even people have paid a price for it. They're gaining weight, they may have diabetes and hypertension, they may be on medications, they may have had heart surgery. But they're resisting giving it up. And we start to think, well, how could there be sort of this addictive quality of meat? Well, it turns out that if you take Narcan and you inject it into Hank's arm, he doesn't just eat less chocolate, he eats less meat, meaning that meat seems to have an opiate effect too on the brain. All right? So is it a good idea to get away from meat? Absolutely. This is Dean Ornish's work on reversing heart disease. The average person loses about 10% of their body weight, but if you're already at good weight, you're not going to lose anything, and if you're already really heavy, you could lose however much you need to lose. Cancer risk in people who don't eat meat is about 40% less than other people. Blood pressure comes down, diabetes gets better, and Alzheimer's risk falls. And I have a session all about Alzheimer's later this week, and I hope you'll come by for that, because Alzheimer's is number one on everybody's list of things I'd never want to get. And I'm going to show you some really new amazing findings on that. Okay, if you are new to this, or if you know somebody who might be new to it, the next question is, I'm convinced, I'm sure that if I were vegan I'd be healthier, but how does a person actually start? And I'd like to just walk you through how we start this. The first thing, in our medical facility, when people come in, and we explain to them how a vegan diet could help them to lose weight or get their cholesterol down or whatever, what we ask them to do is not to take anything out of their diet at all for the first week. For about 7 days, we just ask them to check out the possibilities. So that means, think about a breakfast that you would like to eat that doesn't have any animal products in it at all. And then think about some lunches and dinners and snacks, and just write them down. So for the next 7 days, your homework is don't take anything out of your diet. Just experiment with vegan foods and see which ones you like. So, all right, I haven't made oatmeal since I was a kid. I'll try it. And I'll make it good by putting some cinnamon and some raisins or blueberries or strawberries on top and see if I like it. And if I do, I write it down. And then I'll have pancakes with butter. No, but I can have it with syrup. Okay, fine. So I think that's good. I'll write it down. I'll have my cereal, but instead of cow's milk, I don't know, almond milk? How many people have tasted almond milk? Is it good? Okay, all right. So I'm going to write that down. I thought that was pretty good. I never scrambled tofu. This is my week to try it, and if I don't like it, you set it aside. If you like it, you have it. But so the whole idea is just to figure out the ones that work for you, and that takes about 7 days. So for lunch, I never had the veggie burger at the cafe that I eat at. I never tried a pizza without cheese. How would that work? Let's try, okay? And then if I'm at an Italian restaurant, can they make me something at an Italian restaurant that's vegan? Of course they can. They've probably got lentil soup and minestrone and pasta e fagioli and their angel hair pasta. They're happy to top it with a arrabbiata sauce instead of the meat sauce. Okay, easy. Mexican, are there Mexican things I could get that are vegan? Like what? Bean burrito? Veggie fajitas? Okay, that's good. Beans and rice? Okay, easy. And by the way, at Mexican restaurants, once in a while a person will say, no, no, no. You have to have lard in the beans to give it that authentic taste. Have you heard people say that? Your beans have to be flavored with lard. I want you to sit the owner down and give the owner a history lesson. You might be in Tucson, Arizona, or somewhere. There have been people, there have been people growing beans in North America and Central and South America for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, before Spanish people showed up with pigs and said, you know, a little lard would go pretty well in those beans. All right? That's a European invention, the idea that there ought to be lard in beans. The traditional way of cooking beans that goes back over the millennia doesn't have lard in it whatsoever. So a lot of them are kicking that up. All right? Does that make sense? Okay, so how about Chinese cuisine? Are there vegan things at Chinese restaurants? All kinds of it. Rice dishes, tofu dishes, vegetable dishes. Their big problem, as with almost all restaurants, isn't making something vegan. They can all do that. Their problem is an over-exuberance with oil. They want to douse everything in oil. So you've got to kind of negotiate with them a bit. Which is, by the way, why Chinese food is good. Because if you have Japanese food, veggie sushi, for example, very delicate, very light, not very oily. Lots of nice salads and things. If you're at Subway, will they make a submarine sandwich for you without meat, without cheese? Sure they will. Lettuce and tomato and cucumbers and spinach and olives and a little red wine vinegar, and they'll toast it for you and they'll call it Veggie Delight. Taco Bell is not the pinnacle of culinary art, but if that's where you happen to eat, just leave the cheese off and your bean burrito happens to be vegan. Okay, fair enough. So you're taking 7 days and all you're doing is figuring out which foods you like. Then take 3 weeks and do it all vegan all the time. No animal products. And only 3 weeks, because it's a short period of time, that allows you to really do it 100%. And at the end of 3 weeks, 2 things happen. Number 1, you are physically healthier. You're losing weight. Your cholesterol is coming down. If you have diabetes, your blood sugar has already started to fall. And by the way, let your doctor know that you're doing this. I'm giving a diabetes lecture today, later as well. This is a really powerful thing to do for your diabetes, and many people's blood sugar goes way down really fast, which means your doctor has to work with you to take you off your medicines when the time comes, which is really exciting. Okay, but the second thing that happens is not only are you physically healthier, but your tastes are starting to change. Yeah. And you're not expecting that, but let me ask you, are people in this audience, are there some of you who ever switched, ever in the past, from whole milk to low-fat milk or skim milk? Let me see hands. Okay, when you did, what was the skim milk like at first? When you first tasted skim milk, what was it like? Watery? It doesn't even look right. It's kind of blue. Did you adapt to it? Okay, let me see hands. Did you get used to it? Okay, all right. Did you ever go back and taste whole milk again? What was that like? It's like thick. It's like cream. It's like paint. Well, wait a minute. Your whole life was perfectly fine. But once you get away from fatty foods, if you're strict with it, your taste buds forget their desire for fat and they start to embrace the lower fat diet. And this is why we do it 100%. Because if you reawaken the fat taste, you'll never forget it. So for 3 weeks, all vegan all the time, and it changes people physically, it changes their taste, all right? You can use transition foods if you want. That's the veggie bacon, veggie sausage. It's sort of like meat methadone, sort of. It gets you over it. These things are okay. All right, we have our 21-day vegan kickstart. Has anybody ever done this? It's online. Go to pcrm.org, sign up. It starts fresh every single week. You'll get emails with menus and recipes and cooking videos and advice. And it's a cool thing. We've got apps that are also, you'll find, 21-day vegan kickstart. Use our apps. It is in English and Spanish and Mandarin, and we have one that's in English, but it's all Indian food ingredients, and a Japanese program. About 600,000 people have used this. If you're a doctor or a healthcare provider, encourage your patients to use this. It will change their life. We're not selling anything. It's just good information. For any healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, researchers, dietitians, please join us in Washington, D.C., August 10th and 11th, when we are at our most sweltering. That's when we're going to have the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine. Dean Ornish is going to be our first speaker. It's going to be a great, great, great conference with 15 hours of CME. This is Barnard Medical Center. We set this up because we wanted to have a clinic that did not treat diabetes as if it was a metformin deficiency, and didn't treat cholesterol like it was a Lipitor deficiency. Hi, you've got high cholesterol, here's your prescription. These are problems that come from food. We'll give you a prescription if you need it, but we always start with food. And the doctor will point out how food causes these problems, and then hand you off to one of our registered dietitians who will help you create a menu, and then hand you off to our classes where you and your skeptical spouse can come and learn about a vegan diet, and the classes are free, and you can come forever as long as you want to. And it changes people's lives. And the doctors feel like, finally, I've got a team that will work with me. And it's the most amazing thing. So for any of you who are caregivers, I would love to share our model with you because it really, really, really helps the patients enormously. I've got a whole bunch of books, and I'm super excited that this new one came out. It's the cookbook for reversing diabetes. And I just saw it last night for the first time. It's in the bookstore. Please get 600 of them for all your closest friends. It really turned out really very beautifully. And I want to brag about Drina Burton, who did all the recipes for it. She's a genius in the kitchen and did such a beautiful job with it. It is not your imagination. There are so many people who are adopting either vegan or very nearly vegan diets and are really happy with the results. That's Mac Danzig, the mixed martial arts champion. There's the meat eater. I hope he's okay. Anyway, this is Patrick Baboumian, the world's strongest man. This is Megan Duhamel. She just won the gold in the latest Olympics. There's Jonas von Essen, the world memory champion. These are the people who memorize a pack of cards in 30 seconds. But if they're eating cheese and meat and so forth, they can't oxygenate their brain. So the smartest, best athletes are all going vegan. So it's a great thing to do. The last thing that I just want to finish up with is I hope you found this information useful. However, the people who need this information the most are not here in this room. They're not on a cruise. They're living somewhere, they're 12 years old, and they don't know why they're having health problems because the foods that they pick up in school seem totally normal to them. We should be having chicken wings and pepperoni pizza and hot dogs, and this is a normal way to eat. And as kids are gaining weight, and then they're blamed for failing to exercise. That's your problem, Sonny. And we continue to feed them unhealthy foods. This is a toxic environment. We need to change that. Kids are walking home and the convenience store feeds them all kinds of unhealthy things. And when they get home, their parents are busy and doing the best they can. So a frozen pizza is something everybody is going to eat. And then we wonder, maybe it was the soda? We have to not only learn ourselves here what we can do. We have to take this information and share it as widely as we possibly can. So that means sharing a book and sharing a DVD and sharing things you've learned. And when you find recipes or you find a new product at the store, sharing it with other people. And social media now allows us to do that in a really, really, really big way. So take endless pictures, share them with everybody. You can be a propagandist just like me. And we're going to work together, and what are we going to do? We're going to change this world together, right? Thank you very much. Thank you.